Okay, welcome everybody. I'm glad you're here and I want to thank you for coming by. This is Chris Petri. Today we're doing ink and wash. Beautiful technique. Not a tremendous amount of artists work in this type of style, but it's a great way to paint. I've done it over the years. I think you'll have a great time with this. And I also know that it's a lot of fun because it's a little bit less difficult when it comes to the painting. Every artist will have their challenges. When we're watercolor artists, we all might have our challenges, right? I'm no different than you. I'm the same way. Sometimes it's easier for me to draw, but I have a harder time painting. Some of you might be better at painting, but it's harder and more difficult to draw. So the whole reason for this painting is ink and wash is a fun way where you can have an easier time painting. Painting is more fun with ink and wash. So you're going to see that play out here on this video. We're just looking at the finished painting here. So what you'll do is you'll either take a picture of this, you'll save this to your computer, you'll pause this and use this as you'll use this to work from. So this will be just like a photograph. If you like to work from photographs, I do myself. I work a ton with photographs, or I work from the TV set, from my panel TV set. You will actually, your paintings will turn out a lot better if you're working from a finished work that's already a watercolor painting. Like if you're working from a photograph, that's great too. I would practice that. But if you're kind of, 1 to 5 years painting watercolors, your best bet definitely is to work from finished watercolor paintings, because you really see what your goal is when you're looking at the actual painting. If you're looking at a photograph, you're not going to try to paint exactly what you see, because you'll never be able to match it. It's kind of a odd thing about watercolor. Watercolor is you look at your subject matter and then you sort of interpret how you want it to look as you're painting it. So here, if you already have your watercolor painting in front of you and you're working from that, you're set. You just have to match your colors and your tonal values, and it's a lot easier. So let's get started. We'll get into the drawing first, then the ink, and then the final washes of watercolor on this. And you'll have a great time doing this. This is fun. You can learn this, and we'll have a great time doing it. Okay, see you in just a minute. Okay, everybody, so we're going to get started now on the drawing of our street scene here, our English street scene. We're going to be doing ink and wash. Now, with ink and wash, it's a good idea to maybe pencil in a little bit first, so that's what we're going to do. We're just going to take an office pencil here. This is a number 2. Oh, this actually is a number 3. Number 3 lead, hard, office pencil. And number 2 works, fine too. Most office pencils or school pencils are like number 2 lead, so this is a number 3. It's a little bit different, but we'll make sure it's sharp. And we'll start our drawing, our contour drawing of our scene. Now I'm going to actually do this first as a light sketch. And I think for ink and wash style, so we're doing ink and wash style, so I might not do like a real detailed drawing on this. I might just do a very light sketch, pencil line sketch, somewhat in the tradition of contour drawing, to get our basic shapes of the village buildings, the houses, the row houses. And that should be good. So we'll start here. And again, as you always notice, I try to get some small hash marks around my paper, around on the tape. So I always put a small 1/2 inch or 3/4 inch piece of tape around the whole entire paper. This is Arches Rough. So you have Arches Rough paper here. Beautiful paper, great paper. And you will use this tape around, this high quality artist tape, to put our marks on, so that we kind of have a guide to where we're going to create our street scene. and where our row houses are going to go. So here, I'm just going to look over across from me. I have my laptop set up with a photograph. So it's a laptop screen with a photograph, full size, on the laptop screen. And we're going to start just sketching out basics. Okay, so the roof starts about here on the building that's closest to us in the foreground. So now here we can put roof. And then the corner of the building is approximately here. So we'll put building here, BLDG. I put that as an abbreviation for building. So we have our building here, the corner of the building. And I could put an angular line this way, knowing that the buildings are going to go this way on an angle. And we'll use the pencil to get our line for our angles on our building, and we'll do it very lightly so we can adjust it if we need to, and use a little bit of a kneaded eraser. So really at this point all you need is a Sharpie marker or a pen to make your darker hash marks, and then a pencil, and then a kneaded eraser in case when we're doing our sketching with our pencil we can do a little bit of erasing. And this kneaded eraser doesn't make any crumbs, which is very important. When you do watercolor paintings, you don't want any crumbs from your eraser to get onto your paper and on your working area. So that's why you'll see most watercolor artists always use kneaded erasers. So that's just a little tidbit of information if you're newer here and you haven't worked with watercolor a lot. You always want to buy the kneaded erasers for your watercolor work that you do. So if you just do regular pencil sketching on your own and you're not doing a watercolor painting, you can just use a regular eraser. But for watercolor, when you're going to work on watercolor paper, you'd want to use this kneaded eraser, and it's just usually this color, like a putty gray, and it comes in a little small square packaging like this. Okay, so we're going to keep going here, and we have so our roof line is here, corner of the bottom of the building is here. Then we're going to say, let's make this let's go all the way over to the right here, and we're going to put a line where we see the other buildings. And the other building, actually, we're going to do the line of the building, the last building on the left-hand side. So the buildings are going to go across the page like this. And as you can see, we started off with the finished painting. So you have seen the finished painting, so you know what buildings that we're speaking about, and you already have that finished painting printed out, maybe on a printer or saved to your electronic device. So you have that. You can be looking at that now if you want. So we're going to have the buildings are coming across the scene this way, and they end almost at the end of the paper. And the buildings are, obviously, the building rooftops and the buildings themselves diminish in size as they go into the distance here. Does that make sense? So they're just, anything that's going into the distance is always going to get smaller and cooler in color. So it'll be a little cooler in color, a little more blue as you're painting it. And we'll cover that later when we're doing our painting. Okay, so now here we'll say that the distant building is going to be about probably almost just a little bit under a half. So that's going to be the building. I'll call that the last building. The last building. I know that's the last building in the row of buildings here. And then there's another building over here too. I think the photograph I'm working with, I'm not going to use, there's a building on the right-hand side over here. I'm not going to use that. I'm just going to use this row of buildings with the last building being about here. Okay, and we'll say that the last building ends about here. And I'll put BLDG for abbreviation, building. For here, so it's going to be about here, and the top of the building is going to be about here where the roof is. Okay, so we have our hash marks. Again, these hash marks are really important, and you can also do a few over here. So let's say that the building is here. Okay, so we have the building here, and then we're going to have another, and we're going to put just another line next to this and put road. So right here is the road. Start road. So that's going to be start road. Road is going to start about here with some grass, just for a little mark that we can remember where the road's going to be. And then we can say that the bottom of the building in the distance is going to be about here. So last building, B-O-T, bot of building. Bottom of building, B-O-T-T dot building. Bottom of building, here. And I think we've got all the hash marks we need now. So if you're doing this painting at home, let's do this same exact thing. Let's not recreate the wheel. You're going to do the same thing I did here. You'll take your watercolor paper, which this is approximately looks like about this is a 10 by 14 size paper, 10-inch by 14-inch paper. You can use a little smaller paper if you want, or a little larger paper. But we just want to remember that we're going to use these hash marks. So all you have to remember is on your paper, when you put your tape on your paper around the border of the paper, you're going to have these hash marks, and you just want to get those on there so you have your points that you know you need to use to get your drawing correct. Okay, hey, this is a perfect time to take a break. I know it looks like we haven't done a lot. We haven't even started drawing yet, but sometimes just doing these hash marks is a little stressful, and it takes time to do it. But let me tell you, if you do these hash marks around your painting, you are going to get so much better results because you're planning out where everything is going ahead of time. It takes a little more time, yes. It's a little bit sometimes aggravating or painstaking, but if you do put these hash marks on, you're going to be so much happier because then you're going to know where everything has to land when you're drawing, so that you're not scratching your head every 5 minutes wondering where everything has to go and where you need to be. So you'll notice if you've been using this plan of action, the hash marks, you already know it works, right? Everybody, you know that, right? You've been using it. So all you that are using this, you're already succeeding, and you know it works. For those of you that are just starting, or if you haven't listened to me or you're not paying attention, please pay attention. Listen to me. If you do these hash marks, your drawing is going to come out 100% better, okay? All right, let's get to the drawing. So we'll be right back. Okay, we're back. We're back in action here. Okay, now, we did our hash marks. We just did our hash marks. Excellent. That's what you want to do? Good, perfect, you got it done. You take a break, 5-10 minutes. Now we're back. We're going to do our sketching. We're fresh. Our concentration level's back to where it needs to be so that we're ready to start doing the drawing, the pencil drawing. Again, I always say take breaks, because if you keep pushing and pushing and pushing, and you're not taking breaks, your concentration level is gonna falter, and then you're not going to get the good results. So you want good results. Good. Let's keep going. Take breaks. Take breaks. All right. We're taking breaks. We're taking breaks. All right. So now we're going to get started drawing. I'm going to just look across from me, and what I do is when I'm contour drawing or just sketching or drawing, I'm always looking back and forth at the picture that whatever I'm drawing. If I'm working from a photograph, from the laptop, from a phone, if I'm outdoors and I'm drawing from outdoors or indoors, setting up things inside the house like still life setups or flowers, whatever it is I'm drawing, I'm just constantly looking back and forth. Paper, look at the subject, look at the paper, look at the subject, look at the paper, look at the subject, and your eyes just keep bouncing back and forth, and you'll just notice as you do it, you'll get used to that rhythm of always looking back and forth, and you'll kind of just go along. So, all right, let's keep going here. So we're going to come down to about here, and again, it doesn't have to be perfect, but you do want it to and then even when I'm doing my contour drawing like this, I'll look at the paper and say, okay, now here's the corner, here's the roof. The roof comes down and then it stops here. And now there's a directional change. because the roof, this is the actual rake edge of the roof. They call that the rake edge. And now here on this point of the roof, this is where the fascia starts. That's the front of the roof edge. So the rake is the side and the front is the fascia. So now the fascia comes down and it goes to about a little more than a third of the paper. So again, I do a little quick adjustment here and I say a third, a third, a third. Third, 1/3, 1/3. Just so I have it there. Okay, so about a third, this comes down, this fascia, and it's about almost halfway. And again, we want to get about a halfway point on this here, 1/2. So now we have 1/2 here. We go a third of the way. So this is a steep fascia. It comes down like that. Look at it. Wow, that's a lot. So it's a little bit above half though. So it's not quite to the halfway point, but that fascia actually is very steep when we look at it in the picture. Okay, and then this goes up like this. Goes up to about there and then trails this way like this. This is not simple stuff. This is, again, if you have your hash marks, you use those to get your points and your approximate locations you need to be. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect. Don't stress on the details of it, like that it has to be perfect, but you do want to get it approximately close. And also too, here you can use a ruler if you want to go and take a ruler and say, okay, halfway across the paper I'm going to make a super light line. We'll do that here. You might not see this at home, but I'm going to put a halfway point on my picture this way. And then maybe I'll put another halfway point. We did some thirds. Let's do a half where the half page is. Half is here, or center. Again, you cannot have enough hash marks, but you don't want to go too insane with them either and put like a zillion of them. But let's do half the page. So we'll put basically a grid of quarters. 1/4, 2 quarters, 3 quarters, 4 quarters. So almost just like a crosshairs across the page. Half and then half. And then that can be a somewhat of, if it's a super light, you don't have to make it dark, make it super light just so you can barely see it at home. And then you have it. And then you can use that. And you can also, if you printed out this picture, so if you printed out my painting at home, you can take that printed copy of the painting, the finished painting that I did, and put lines on it, draw pencil lines across it, or pen or magic marker, put the lines in marker across the painting. And then when you go to draw it from the painting, you'll see how that line going horizontal and that line going vertical will help you to kind of keep on track with your drawing and with where everything has to be when you're drawing it. So that'll be a help too. Okay, so now we got that. Then here, now since we have this shape of this roof here, then we just go off of that and say, okay, that other roof starts here and it comes down like this, and it doesn't have to, again, doesn't have to be perfect, and it ends up being about the same height, and then it comes down like so. A little bit of an angle there. Okay, and then here, now this goes down like so on an angle. And it's about, okay, so I already see that I'm going off track here a little bit. So I want to try to keep this a little bit. And again, if it's not perfect, you don't have to worry about it. So now here, this roof comes up like this. This roof, I'm coming back up here, comes like this. Then there's a chimney up here. So So there's a chimney there. Again, doesn't have to be perfect. Then here, there's a dormer. And now this dormer is, the top of the dormer is level or parallel. So it's parallel to the top of the page, the top of the tape, or it's parallel with this line here that we did. This line, I can see that, it's parallel. And then we go back into the roof section there, and then here we go with that. And that's all. There we go, we have our dormer. Then there's another dormer, and that starts about here, comes down there for the roof. So the roof of the dormer is there, goes down here, this gable end of the roof. We call this a gable. The point, the arrow point of the roof, we call that the gable. The gable is here. And then we keep drawing. And we say, all right, that goes there. This is angled up this way. And there we go. So we have our two dormers. And then our roof ends there. And that's somewhat close to what the picture is. All right, looking good. So we're moving right along. Okay, so now here we have this part of the building goes here. And this part of the building goes here. Then we have some bushes here. And we have the other roof over here. Okay, and then we come over here and we keep gauging everything and using our sense of halves or thirds. So you're always getting used to the idea of halves, thirds, and quarters. Or if you're using metric, you might be using a different system than I have. So in America, we use mostly the American, which is the standard American, which is, quarters, thirds, halves. That works with everything from measuring on a ruler. So on a ruler, you're going to have, 1 inch. We use inches and then halves. So 1 inch, and then there's the half inch. Then there's the quarter inch. And it goes all the way down to the 30 seconds and even smaller than that if you're using or if you're doing something in engineering. But for the most part, you can use quarters, halves, 3/4, and 1 inch if you're using the standard, American standard. And then of course, if you're using metric, you're using centimeters. So for the centimeters, I don't know if you use 0.5. That's probably 2.55. 1, so I guess it's 0.5. You're using decimals more or less in the metric system. So whatever it takes, you just have to kind of get used to eyeing things up on your drawing according to more simple terms for yourself. So I know this is half the page. Half the page. Half the page is horizontally half of the page, vertically half of the page, and then you can go thirds, 1/3, 1/3, or 1/3, 1/3. So you're just getting used to dimensions and kind of scaling things a little bit. So okay, let's keep going. Just a little tidbit of information as we keep drawing, and when you're drawing, you want to be thinking of these little small things to help yourself as you draw. Does that make sense? So you kind of get a feel, okay, that's half, that's a quarter of the way, that's a half of the way. And after practicing that a while, you'll have it. No problem. So now here we come down with this rake edge, like that. And then we come down like that. The angle is softer. So this is the other roof we're going to have here. And then we use a light sketch there, and then we're going to do the, there's a beautiful chimney here. And then there's another chimney here, which is about here. And it's not as quite high, so I look at this one and this one. So I'm always looking at things and saying, is that higher, is that lower, where is that? Well, it's about maybe halfway down on this chimney is the top of the next one. Maybe the chimney pot's a little higher there, but that's okay. And then we just make the, you might look at this as being like a rectangle, like a box. So a chimney is basically like a box, like a tissue box. Or that could be, you could see it as like a shape that you're familiar with. You might say, oh yeah, that looks like a box or a cube. Or, that might look like a stick of butter. To me, that's a stick of butter. So if you think this is, if you look at this chimney and say, oh, that's a stick of butter, then you just sort of know you got to draw basically a stick of butter on an angle on this here. Like over here, you got to angle it a little bit because it's going off in the distance. That's perspective. And then we just keep going, and then we've got another chimney down here. And that one's like that, same thing, stick of butter. Another smaller stick of butter on top of that. And then that goes this way, and that's a roof that's going off on a different angle, like this. And then here we have this roof. And that goes like so. And then if your angles get a little bit off, we should be taking a break by now. That's why you see me not drawing correctly, is because I haven't taken a break. So let's take a break. All right, everybody, let's take a break for about 5 minutes, 10 minutes, get our concentration levels back up to speed, and then we'll get going again. All right, so we'll be right back. Okay, we're back again, and we're going to continue our drawing. So we're doing our contour drawing or sketch. Now, if you're, if you like a more like looser feel or looser look to your paintings and drawings, that's not a problem. You can sort of feel this out with a sketch, and you maybe won't be using like a more of a more accurate drawing. Like I like to draw accurate. I really do. I've been drawing many, many years now. I use a lot of, mostly 90% of the time I'm contour drawing, but sometimes I do hash out some lines as you'll see. So what we're doing here is, we're trying to draw very accurately this scene. But again, you can do it looser and a little more freer by, maybe holding the pencil a little differently. So if I can sort of get an idea, sometimes, you can sketch and get a feel for things like so. You can do that. If you don't want to take too much time drawing, you can do more of a quicker drawing, a little looser. Then you get your chimneys in, accurately for perspective, sticks of butter, tissue box, whatever you want to think of. Think of things as shapes. You'll be much better off. So here you're working around the painting or the drawing, so you can keep going. So you can draw it a little more in a looser fashion than what I'm doing. But I've practiced most of my drawing doing more accurate contour drawing like this. So that's why I'm doing it this way. But feel free, if you like to do it a little differently, that's fine. Everyone has their own little nuances of how they draw, how they paint, and that's fine. I'm not an expert, when it comes to every single thing in art and whatever, so I'm not claiming to be an expert at every single facet of drawing or painting. I'm just trying to bring you my best information that I have. So does that make sense? I just want to make sure you're kind of seeing the options here so you're not suffering over trying to draw more of an accurate drawing. If you want to do more of a looser drawing, that's fine too. But the hash marks are the critical point. You want to definitely do those though. So whether you're going to draw more accurately like this and more tighter contour drawing style, or if you want to do more of a sketch style drawing, you still absolutely want to have your hash marks set on your drawing. Okay, so now let's keep going here. So now we have this here. So this is the other this is the last building, so the bottom of building. So I think here I went a little bit off my marks, and that's okay. I'm somewhat close. I mean, it's off by, a little bit, but not too much, which is okay. So that's the bottom of this building. And then it goes off like this a little bit. And then this roof goes here, so there's a little bit of perspective here. Like that, and then... All right, good. And this building here, we're going to just move right around, and this one comes down further, so I noticed that right away. This house here is further in the distance, so it tucks behind this one here, which is closer to us. So I get that point, and I say, okay, good. And the road actually goes in there too. So we're looking at a road that kind of goes in here a little bit. And that's going to come this way, that road. So that's like that. And then, okay, so now we're going to come up this way. This, again, that's a vertical line. I hold my pencil up across from me and look at that picture that I'm looking at on my laptop, the photograph, and I say, is that line straight? I hold my pencil up, look at it. Yes, let's see, it is straight, so good. I can put my pencil down and say it's straight. So we get a straight vertical line there. That's plumb, a plumb line, a straight vertical line there for the corner of this building. So if you can imagine, all these corners of the buildings are all vertical, and they all go straight, right down the line. The angles are on the roofs, and they get steeper here, and then as they go into the distance, they level out like that. And that's just a natural occurring thing in perspective when we're looking at things. Our eyesight picks up these angles, and so what's the simple way to remember this is all the building lines of the corners of the building are all perfectly straight like this. Variation. I mean, if the building's a little bit off a touch, but they're all straight, all these lines. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And this one here. These are all plumb, vertical. All right, let's keep going here. We're excited. The painting is going to be just in a few minutes. That's the exciting part. Always keep that in your mind when you're drawing. That's a secret. When you're drawing, always remember, in just a few minutes or so, I'm going to get to paint. That's the fun. That's more fun. Maybe some people like drawing more. I like drawing, but whatever. Everyone's different. So let's keep going here. Okay, so now we're looking at this here. This is a bit of a overhang here. And what I see, let me try to get this line, which is important. So here, this building is here. There's a fence there. A nice, gorgeous fence that's between the two buildings. There's probably a little barbecue back in here, and a little patio and some chairs, and people enjoy a nice time having some barbecue and some tea. In between the two buildings, there's like a little courtyard, I'm sure of that, with a patio. And there's all kinds of nice bushes here and flowers. So we're trying to think of pleasant thoughts here as we're drawing. I probably won't get too much more detail over here. This is just going to be the road here, the street. And then it sort of tapers around this way. So we'll just taper it around this way. Okay, now we're here. Then there's another bush here. This is quite a large hedge. And this comes down, and there's some flowers and plantings over here. All right, so that's the move from here to here. And then this here is going up. And it follows the same angle as here. So I stop and observe as I'm drawing and say, what's the angle of the bottom of this section of the wall on this house? Well, I look at the roof angle here and say, oh, you know what? That's pretty much the same angle. So I take my pencil, I drop it on that angle, I drop my pencil down, and I have my angle, and then I just make a point there and to this angle here. And there we have it. Perfect. Look at that. Excellent. And then here we're going to go, there's a wall here. Now this bush actually goes like that. So it kind of extends in there, and then we have some weeds out here. And then there's some more, there's a couple plantings there, flower pots there. And then there's the wall. Then there's another wall here. And I'm just trying to get the little nuances of detail here. So we have that other wall there. And that's pretty good there. And then there's some more detail over here. So now here there's a corner detail of some, so it's a corner post on the corner of the building, decorative corner section. And then here we see that there's like a flower pot here. We'll put that there. And we'll go back here. And that's pretty good. So we have that corner piece there. And then we have the trim. So we're going to work on some of the trim here. Trim doesn't have to be perfect. I'm just going to really zip through this trim here. So the trim is like this, large trim here with maybe another piece under there. There's a piece coming down here on an angle. There's another piece here that comes down like this. And then another piece that goes across like that. So I'm just getting that in quick because that's going to be dark paint. The trim is dark. And you'll know that because you did look at the painting when you started. So, all right, so that's pretty good. I think we have everything pretty much. The only thing we don't have is let's do some of the, this is a Tudor style. So we'll put those boards in. There's a window here, right up to the bottom of the eave of the roof there. There's another window here. It just follows the angles of the trim, so that's all you have to remember. And then like this, and there's another window there. And again, I'm not going to go too overboard. Let's just hash in some trim. And there's some more trim over here. It sort of follows this line like that. Then the trim, so I'm just trying to get that looking close to what's there. There's another window here. So these are windows. halfway, quarter, 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 half. And this over here is a window, half, quarter, quarter. Okay, and then over here, more details. There's a small roof gable here with an entryway. Okay, and then over here we have the same thing. We have some Tudor boards on the home here. Okay, and a couple windows there, a couple windows here. And that should be good. And then we'll do just some of the trees over here. And then there's another chimney here. Goes up quite a bit. Again, stick of butter. Like that. Chimney pot on top. Then there's some more trees over here. You don't have to do all the trees. If you see something in a painting, you don't have to do all the trees. You can do some of them. You can kind of get, you can kind of gauge how many you want to do. You can just look at them and say, oh, I want to do most of the trees along the tops of these roofs. Or you might say, I want to diminish and not do as many. Here, I'll do a little more treetops here. I'll leave some there. So I did some, but not every single one that I see in the photograph. Okay, we're ready to paint. This is enough, plenty enough information to start painting. So, okay, in just a minute, let's start painting. Okay, everybody, we're back and we took a break again. We're taking lots of breaks as we work. Very important. You'll always hear me say that on my channel. Take lots of breaks as you work. You know, sometimes your breaks might be 10 minutes, 5-10 minutes. Sometimes, 20 minutes, half an hour if you might have a meal or something, if you're in between like breakfast or lunch or dinner time. Also, too, you might work a little bit into the evening hours and then you pick up the next day. Fine. All those things are really going to be helpful for you as a watercolor artist. And painting, the breaks really help you to remain focused, keeping an eye on the details of how your painting's coming along. It kind of helps you to catch some issues if you're starting to drift off and do some things like habits that you might have done in the past that you sort of are, you've sort of gotten over some habits that you used to have when you were drawing or painting certain things in drawing or painting. And then, if you're taking your breaks, then you're kind of going to see that if you step back and look at your painting, or you step back and say, oh, I'm starting to do this again. I need to kind of, keep focused and not do something, certain. Does that make sense? All right, so great. So we're kind of taking breaks as we go. Again, we took a break. Now we're coming back. And then I forgot. Hey, I almost forgot. I'm so used to working a lot of times and just going from the pencil drawing to the watercolor washes. Hey, we're doing ink and wash today. So ink and wash is really exciting. I'm glad, I know there's many of you that ask about ink and wash. You send me some text messages or some emails, or you send me comments, and I appreciate everyone sending great comments in the comment section. Thanks so much. And I always mention too, if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. You hit that subscribe button just below the painting here and the video here. When you subscribe, every weekend you'll see our new paintings coming out where we're working and starting a new drawing and painting, or an ink and wash if we're doing that. Of course, we change things, we do things, we mix it up here on my channel. I do different techniques so that you learn a lot of different techniques, and then you can, find your niche of what you like to do. So if you have more options, you're going to have more flexibility with your style and your art, and that's what I want. So I want you to have lots of options. So again, if you like this channel, please subscribe. And if you hit that notification bell, then you're going to be alerted on your phone or your electronic device when the new video comes out on the weekend. So you'll be alerted, and then that I'm making a new video, you can check out the video and see if you like it and if you want to work along with us here. All right, so I have very simple Super Black India ink. Super Black, and this is Speedball brand. This is a great brand. I use this exclusively, Speedball brand, Super Black India ink. And I buy it in these 16-ounce squeeze bottles. And I've had this for like, 2-3 years now. And it lasts tremendously long. You don't probably have to buy more than a few every 3 or 4 years. And I have these I picked up online too, little plastic. You can use cough medicine lids. You know how they have those little plastic cough medicine tops on cough medicine? You can use those. You can use these. I've used shot glasses, whatever I have around. I try to use whatever is handy. And so we just pour a little bit of ink in here. Not too much, maybe a quarter of the way. So I just put a little bit in the bottom, not a lot. This is something where if you're working and you're working in a room where you have nice carpet or a nice floor, like a nice wood floor, and you don't want to spill anything, you just put down a little tablecloth or, maybe put down an old sheet or an old towel, something like that, so that you don't spill. Because this is India ink, so India ink can make a mess, and it might stain the carpets or upholsteries. So you want to be very careful with India ink. So here we have our India ink. Then I have two bamboo pens, ink and wash pens. This one's I picked up at my local art store, 2 sizes. So it's got a wider point here, and then a little bit of a finer point here. This is a Bill Buckman's really beautiful bamboo ink pen. Holds lots of ink, so when you want to do the thicker lines, you have this. And you can get that at the Bill Buckman website. And then we're going to start out. I'm going to start out with the Bill Buckman ink pen. And we're going to start putting in our ink. Now this is really fun because when you're doing the ink part of this, you're going to go over with a wash of watercolor. So you're going to do your watercolor washes over what we're doing now with our ink. So you have the freedom now to just have fun and just start blocking in all your darks. So in this painting, there's numerous darks, and we're going to definitely do the Tudor trim in the darks. So let's start that out. Okay, so we're going to start our Tudor trim is going to be the darks. And you can see I'm just going to have fun. I'm just going to scratch and scrape and get that black ink on there and have fun. And it has that nice wood feel of the wood trim. And we don't have to fill in every single bit of paper. We can leave some whites. And this is really fun. This is a great pen too. This is my favorite ink and wash pen. My Bill Buckman pens here. I bought a couple different sizes. I'm probably going to have to pick up a new one soon because I'm starting to wear down the points on this one. And doesn't that look great? So when you're doing an ink and wash, you have a lot of fun when you're doing your darks. And, you just look and say, okay, I'm looking at the darks here. And there's definitely some darks under this eave of the roof here. So we're going to, and you notice I'm not going perfectly straight. I'm waving these lines. Wavy lines look better than straight lines. The haphazard look looks really good. And then we have that, and then so we're just going to keep going here. You can see I'm looking back. I'm actually, as I work, I'm looking back and forth at my photograph that I'm using. goes up there along the windows. And what's great about this is once you're done with your pencil drawing, you have the pencil lines all set up for you. So now when you're going in and doing your ink, you're just following your pencil lines. It's almost like, it's all worked out for you. So you don't have to worry about thinking, really. You're just having fun. We're just putting on the ink here now. And then I'm looking back, of course, and I'm seeing that here there's some darker darks down here. So I'm going to do the shadowing over here. And is there more shadowing over there? Okay, so that's the bushes over here. And that's up there. And you follow your angles. And then we have, let's see, let's put a window here. Sometimes I'll change things if I haven't drawn everything 100% accurate. No problem. I change a little bit and do something a little different. So here I'm doing a window where there doesn't seem to be any on the photograph. And here we have the base of the building. There's some trim, wood trim. So I get some of that in. Over here the same, there's some wood trim there. And that's what I do. I try to definitely be aware of the thickness of the lines. And there's some vents up here, so I'm trying to definitely notice. Obviously they're thicker over here. Let's make them thicker here. Even if they're not as thick in the photograph, make them thicker in the foreground here. That makes a nice effect of where you're feeling the real thickness of the wood closer to us in the foreground, and then it gets thinner. The lines get thinner. If you can get more variation, your painting is going to look more pleasing. So we have those thicker lines there. And let's see what else here. Okay, so that window we have. The bushes are here. Okay, then we have some wood trim under here. Then we have another window here. It's a little bit of a... Here we have a door. Now if you start to always remember, keep a paper towel. Keep some paper towel and some damp water on that paper towel. So if you lean into some of the ink, you can wipe it off your hand and dry off your hand. Because what happened is I'm starting to lean into my ink, and then it's getting onto my hand, on the side of my hand, and then as I'm working on the painting, I'm leaning into my watercolor paper. So, a little bit of spots or something around here and there are not going to be a problem with your painting. So the best thing is, if you're right-handed, you're always starting on the left-hand side of your page and working this way, so that you're never leaning into your paint. You're always working left to right. If you're left-handed, then you're going to be working this way and starting over here, and then working this way with your ink, dipping in and working this way, so that you're never leaning in. Because if you lean into your ink and you don't realize it, you're going to rest your hand on the paper, and it's going to make spots and splotches everywhere definitely don't want to do that. If it happens occasionally here and there, it's no big deal. That's okay. Adds to the variety of your finished look. But if you do it, if it happens too many times, then it gets to look unpleasant. So here we go. We're going to look at some more shadowing under our eaves here. Again, I want to make sure I'm not leaning into anything here. And okay, so again, more. And we got some more of the windows here. And I'm trying to look in here, some decorative stuff under the windows. Under the window and eaves, it's darker, so we could put some darks under there like that. And and then again, we put our pencil lines down, so we can just keep going with that. So we go with our pencil lines. There's some corner on this corner of this wall here. There's some trim. And up here we have trim. Let's do that. A little bit darker and a little bit more shadow under the right side of those gables up here. And there's some shadowing under here. And we just keep sticking with the game plan. We're following our drawing and our picture, so our photograph. So I'm just dipping into my ink constantly here just to get some. And that's why I didn't fill up this ink well too much, because if you add too much in there, then you'll wind up getting a lot of spots and big flows of ink on your paint, on your wash, on your ink portion of this ink and wash. So that's why we are careful to only put a little bit in the well here. Okay, now I rinsed off my bamboo pen. And we'll go to our smaller pen now. This one's going to give us some finer points. And again, I'll usually keep a little paper towel or tissue, perhaps like this. You can take some ink off your pen too, like this, if you want, if you're going to do some really fine lines, but you get a feel for it. Okay. So we're going to do some. Okay, now these are really nice, these ink pens here. Okay, so I'm looking here and I'm saying, wow, there's a dark under there. There, and then there's a dark doorway. So I'm making sure and then there's some windows here with some okay, and there's a trim here. Small piece of trim there, and then there's some trees over here, so I want to make some tree indications there. There's some very bright sunlight on these walls, so over here we're in the distance now, the far distance, so we're not really too concerned about as much detail because it's starting to trail off in the distance. And some of our chimneys here, we have where the chimneys corbel out, there's usually some shadowing where the bricks are corbelling out for decorative effects on the chimneys. When the masons do the chimneys, they add decorative ribbons and brick features on there, so we'll try to create that same. And the sunlight is coming from this way, from the right to the left on the painting. So the shadowing is more on the left over here. So on the chimney pots, I'm making them, as well as on the chimneys, we're going to make them a little darker on this side. I'll just put a little bit of and we just put some indications of. So we're really in great shape now. We have plenty of detail with our ink. You can see we've gotten all of our details on the windows, the eaves, the wood trim of the Tudor style architecture here. So we have those architectural features of Tudor, that English Tudor, beautiful architecture. People that design these are very talented. They create beautiful designs with the Tudor wood on the facades of these buildings. So it gives us as artists beautiful opportunity to capture those gorgeous details. And so we're pretty much we'll do a little bit of detailing on the rooftop portions here. There is some darker darks a little bit, but that's pretty good. I think we're pretty much, there's a couple things here. There's some flower boxes underneath the windows. So those flower boxes have some details underneath. The shadowing looks really good. There's some trim there. And this is also some flower pots here. And that looks pretty good. So that looks very close to all the details we need for our ink and wash. Okay, so as we kind of get our final details here, we have a good feel of, so we have this interesting road. We have this interesting road coming in like this, and there's a little bit of grass over here. We could put a little couple so I'm putting some scratching in some beautiful little weeds and grasses over here on this little bit of ground and vegetation and grass here, and the road kind of just goes across the scene like this. And we also wanted to get these more of these Tudor trim here. We want to make sure we get that. It doesn't have to be, we made this a little bit diminished than what I see in the picture, the photograph I'm working from. And I think the reason I do that is because this is sort of in the distance, so we want to diminish and make this less exciting, less prominent. This part is the more prominent portion of the picture, of the design, of the of our artwork here, our painting. So But I think we have... This is the fence here. A little bit of... There's some bushes over here. So what I do is I make marks with very light marks with my ink, because once I start painting with the washes, you know, I just want to have a little bit of help to remember where things are, if that makes sense. Okay, that looks perfect. Okay, we're going to take a break and we're going to come back in like, 5-10 minutes. We'll come back. We'll start doing our washes. With ink and wash, the fun of it is because you have so much beautiful looking, intense looking ink on this painting already, you're not going to be so concerned about trying to make perfection with your paints and your watercolor and paints. If you get some decent washes on there, it's going to look great no matter what you do. Whether it's a lighter wash or a darker wash, you can have fun with this and try different washes and things. But I guess my main focus is getting the drawing good, and then getting this ink and wash on correctly. Then you're home free, and then you're just going to have some fun time doing the putting in the washes. The washes are going to go really nicely now. And I'm just going to, if you see I have a couple of windows you forgot to put in, I put them in now. Maybe I see a window in my imagination, I'll put it in then. If there's not on the painting, I'll put it on at that point. Okay, perfect. And we got a little bit of wash up here. Okay, we will be right back. Hey, you've made it. Awesome. I'm glad you're here. We're painting. We're having a good time. We're just going to we just put our ink in, we put our ink on our watercolor paper here. We have Arches rough paper. I know some of you might lose track if you're in the middle of the video and you're watching the video full through, and you might stop and start the video. So I'll sometimes mention a few things over. I hope that's not a problem. So I will mention again that we used Arches rough paper, watercolor paper. We used, a standard number 3 hard office pencil for our preliminary sketch. I took the tape off, but when we started this painting, we had hash marks everywhere. So if you can imagine, we had hash marks at all of these locations where the roof starts, where this portion of the roof started. We had marks over here on the tape. So essentially, if you have missed that part, you have to go back to the beginning of the video, and you'll see that we had hash marks all around this composition, this painting, that helped us to make sure we started our different parts of our drawing in the correct locations, which is very critical, very important. Once you get to work with watercolors and drawing for, maybe 4 or 5 years or more, that can kind of come naturally, and you might not need to make as many hash marks, but I still say try to use them. I think they do help. But, if you've been doing it a long time, and some of you have been painting a long time, you don't really need to do the hash marks so much. But I would say if you're shaky at all with laying out your subject matter on your paper, definitely do your hash marks. I even still do it myself, and I've been painting and drawing for, many years, probably 15, 20 years now. So for the painting portion, I'm going to use a number 10 Da Vinci Maestro watercolor brush. It's a Kolinsky Sable watercolor brush, a great brush. I use these all the time. I have other brushes. Sometimes I'll use maybe a filbert brush for this type of painting too. That works great. A filbert brush is maybe, for me, I like a filbert brush when I'm doing a larger painting, maybe like a 20 by 30. So like a full sheet of watercolor paper. Those large sheets, 20 inch by 30 inch, like 2 foot by 3 foot. This is, like we were saying, is about 14 by 20. So this is not as a large surface. So a 10 or a 12 or a 14 watercolor brush works fine to get our washes on here. So let's start. We're just going to mix up some colors for the roof. We know the colors of the roof are a beautiful orangey red and some browns mixed in there and some tans. So let's get some burnt umber, burnt sienna, raw umber, raw sienna, yellow ochre, cadmium orange, cadmium red. Let's use a lot of our warm colors that we have in our palette. So you can see here, I have a video. If you type in all capitals, Watercolor in 5. I think I have it here. If you type in Watercolor in 5, all capitals, in YouTube search bar, I cover there my palette, my colors, brushes, and all the critical stuff that you'll need if you're just starting out. That's a great channel to subscribe to. I sometimes do different videos. So here we go. Also, warm and cool everywhere, so let's do French ultramarine blue and a little bit of purple up here to get a little bit of a dark going. We want to do a little bit of dark in there too. I tend to keep a tissue on hand and dry off some of the water and paint occasionally if I need to. Let's have fun with this. Reds, oranges, yellows. And then if you start off with lots of paint, then you can diminish it and water it down, add some more water. Warm and cool everywhere, I say. A little bit of cerulean. And some green. Let's use some olive green, sap green, olive green. Let's put a little bit of that in there too. We're going to have some trees up here. Let's get those in. And you can see I'm just kind of flicking on a little bit of leafy looking . And I'll blend that right in with the roof. And look at that. Wow. Looking great. Some gorgeous clay tile roofing here. That gorgeous look. And let's keep going here. We have plenty of... We'll mix up some more. That's what's fun about watercolor. It kind of works on its own if you just watercolor sort of the water and the paint do a lot of the work. If you get some good colors mixed up and you just put it on the paper with some water, it really does wonders. And then where those roofs are turned a little, you can kind of see these these dormer roofs are turned a little bit the other way. They're not the same angle as the red clay tile roof. They're clay tile too, but they're different angle. So that's where we can take advantage of that idea and say, oh, well, that can be a little different color maybe. We'll put in some different washes there. And you can see I'm having fun here. This is a lot of fun here. This here is also in those chimneys. Actually, we can flow right up into those chimneys like that. That's some red brick chimneys. Let's keep them more red than like that. Perfect. Now, as we get more into the distance here, let's introduce some more cooler roof colors. And some purple we'll add in too, and blue, French ultramarine blue, purple. We'll just add some more cooler colors. Does that make sense? Because now this is now we're getting further away, and then as things get further away, they get cooler in the picture. So some green. Let's not forget some green here and there. And green's cool, so that cools down the wash a little bit. But we still want the red and browns and earth colors for that clay tile roof. There we go. And make sure we get the then we have a roof in the distance over here. It seems a little bit it's lighter in tonal value, so I'm going to be careful not to mingle that one with the other roof too much over here. Okay, and again, let's keep mixing our colors here. Let's cadmium red, yellow ochre, raw sienna, raw umber, burnt sienna, burnt umber. And let's get those chimneys. A little bit of blue just to add some variety to it. You can go to a smaller brush here. I don't mind. I like working with the biggest brush I can possibly use. That works for me, but sometimes it's good to switch to a different smaller brush. That works for the chimneys probably a little better. We'll keep going here. Make sure I keep getting my reds, oranges, and yellows, and raw umber, burnt sienna, burnt umber. You can see I want to just keep making sure I'm using the same colors I used before. Then I go in with some green, olive green, cooler, cerulean blue. Then we will have some of that green mixture. I sometimes mix and mingle the colors so that there's a tie-in with all the colors. So if I'm making my greens now, which was sap green and olive green, I'll just take a little bit of that red and mix it in there. That's a complementary color too, so that it makes it a grayish look. And then our blue, bluish, and so we go with a cooler color over here for the trees. I splash for my effects of the trees a little bit. And the things tend to okay, and we just do a little bit of finger painting there, and then a little bit of darks here. Purple, blue, so ultramarine violet for my purple, French ultramarine blue, a little bit of burnt sienna, and maybe I'll just make some and then I'll take my number 8 needlepoint brush, and then we'll get some finer details here in the distance, so that we do these fine details, and then right away there's no confusion. We know that these are trees and these are the trunks of the trees, and there's some distance over here and light behind. It looks good. So that to me is looking excellent. And then again we'll put some more greens here. Then here, if you see a spot that is a problem, just lift it up with some paper towels. Now we have, let's go with since we're working with our greens right now, we're trying to do some of our trees and things. Closer we are here, we can make that more, like a vibrant green, like that, which was cadmium lemon yellow, a little bit of cadmium yellow, and then our two greens, olive green and sap green. So if we use those 4 colors, now we'll take this same mixture and we'll keep working with that. We're going to do our bushes here. These are that really nice bright green, a little more cadmium lemon yellow. Then over here, they're a little bit cooler actually. I started to go with the higher intensity. I meant to go cooler here. So that's the shadowy color here of the bushes on the side. And the same over here. So as you can see, we're working with the warm and cooler version of green. We could take straight paint like that. And then as we get into the distance over here, we want it cooler, so we would use this cooler green. So once you start mixing up your greens, that's fine. You'll kind of notice that if you have plenty of room on your palette, you can mix a couple different areas and you'll have it all set up so that you can go back and forth to, you know, your warmer greens and your cooler greens. So these are the cooler greens over here in the distance. And then over here you have your warmer greens closer to us. Olive green. There's a small flower pot here, and so we'll put some of the and there's some interesting colors, so I want to put that cerulean blue there. All right. Okay, now the temptation is to keep working, and then we might have a problem with, we're going to do some shadow colors on the walls of the buildings. So if we go too quickly now and start working on the shadows of the buildings, we might run into some problems with the paint sort of bleeding into each other and making unpleasant marks. So hey, let's not get zealous here. Let's let this dry now for about a half an hour. Let's let this all dry for about a half an hour, 45 minutes. Then we'll come back and we'll keep working. That's the best bet. So I'll just look around the painting before I stop for my break, just to see if there's anything that looks like I need to work on to finish up some details. I could see over here, that was a roof there we needed to finish up there. And this here looks pretty good. We have our chimneys good. We're going to need some shadows. Okay, so we're looking really good here. Let's come back in about 45 minutes to an hour, and we'll finish up the rest of the painting. All right, hey, we're back. It's Ink and Wash. We took like a 45 minutes to an hour break. This way the painting completely dried 100%. That's the main thing we're going to focus on here is once you get this first wash on with your Ink and Wash now. So we did our ink. We let the ink dry 100% too. So that's like an hour of drying time or more. If you have a blow dryer, you can blow dry once you're done. I do that a lot. In this case, I did use the blow dryer. So once I got all this wash on, like you see, I took the blow dryer and I just went on a low setting and just went over each area of the whole painting really carefully just to make sure. And then I looked at it and I saw that everything was dry, and now we're ready to go again. Same thing with your ink. When you put your ink down, before you go in and start doing your watercolor washes, you definitely want your ink to be 100% dry. If you have a huge puddle of ink somewhere, you can always blot it up with a tissue. You just take your tissue, roll it up like this, and make a little point on it, and then you can pick up a puddle or a little, if there's a little puddle of ink somewhere, and you can get that up with very carefully by just twisting your tissue and doing that anywhere if there's any heavy puddling. But other than that, you want to make sure that dries too. So your ink has to be 100% dry before you start your watercolor washes. And then once you do your first wash, make sure that's 100% dry. Now you can do your second wash, which will probably be the final wash. So you really only need 2 washes of watercolor over the top of your ink once you have your ink done. You need like your first wash like this, and then you go in and we'll do our shadowing. So you'll see how we do this. It's really a pretty simple and straightforward process, you'll see. Ink and wash is a lot of fun, and it's very, very powerful. Ink and wash looks so beautiful. You get a great look on your watercolors with ink and wash. Okay, so now what I'll do is we'll wash up our palette. So I'm going to take my water and we'll just clean up the palette. I always like to do this. We used a lot of washes, and you saw me mixing a lot and making grays up and stuff with primaries or with my mixes, You tend to be okay if you're working with, if you're working with all the reds in the roof, you're safe going in with some greens, which is the complement of red, to mix in to kind of get some of your cooler greens. So if you kind of harmonize all your colors together, that's kind of a feel thing. So you work with it for a while, you'll kind of get the feel of it. But red and green work great together. So you can get your nice grayish, bluish washes with red and green by just adding, some more blue to the mix. And so we're in really good shape here. Again, this is 100% dry now, this wash. You can see, that's how that has to be. Now we'll go in and I'll also change my water. So I'll just add new water to my water bucket. I emptied my water bucket. That's important too now that we're doing some cooler shadows on this picture. You would want to definitely change the water in your bucket a lot. This is just, does that make sense? If you change your water in your bucket quite a bit and your water pail, your colors when you do your lighter washes, like our cooler washes we're going to do now, they're going to look really nice and transparent versus getting a little too muddy with it. So we'll use some cerulean blue. We'll use some purple. We're going to modulate our colors. We're not just going to stick with one color. We're going to mix some warm and cools as we go. So raw sienna. So we have a warmer color, raw sienna. And then we have our cool colors, which is our blue, cerulean blue. Purple, which is ultramarine violet, Winsor Newton. That's the best violet I've found so far when I'm working with paints and trying new paints all the time and seeing which ones work the best and which look the best. I think Winsor Newton has the best violet color, which is ultramarine violet. Okay, now this is the fun part. We'll just pick up some blue and we'll just go right like that. We'll take a little bit of raw sienna. Quickly though, you can't wait too long before you add your cool there and your warm and cool mix. You have to work quickly. Okay, so you can see I got all that cool wash on. 1, 2, 3, like that. Then there's some more that actually extends over here. So I carefully look at my picture. and realize that it's here actually. I went over a spot. Now there's some shadowing here like that. There's also a shadow here. Mix in some warms with those shadows. Don't make them just... And we're leaving the white paper for where the bright sunlight is on these faces of this wall. Here, we look carefully and say, okay, the shadow's about here. So then we just go right across like that, and that's our shadowing, right across the on the undersides of the eave. A little bit of warm too. And we can make them a little wavy. You don't have to make that, better to make that a little wavy, this line. Okay, over here, between the two buildings, that is in shadow and it's cool over there. So let's get that cool color. Ah, the nice cool shadows over here. Look at that. Doesn't that look great? We have the cool over here too. And then over here as well. So I just keep mixing my shadow color, cerulean blue, with a little bit of purple, and then some raw sienna for some warmth. Has to be fast though. When you put that warm color in there, you can't wait. Like you wouldn't put the shadow color in and then come back a minute or two, or like 2 minutes later and try to dab in your, it'll make weird looking, odd looking, unpleasant marks on your washes. So always remember, if you're going to add in some, if you're going to modulate some colors and add some warms into your cools, they have to be fast right away. We can't wait that long on those, or they don't look as good. All right, now we're going to go across here. And we also have to remember to go dark enough for this to look good. That shadow has to be dark enough that it reads correctly, so we don't want it. I'll put some warmth in there too. Okay, perfect. And then here we have more shadow right there, across there. Also too important to get the shadowing on the so it's important to get that shadow completely under where the shadow actually is from the photograph that you're working from. And again, look at this. Ah, the shadows. Look at how beautiful that is. Perfect. Look at how great that looks. Then a little bit of the raw sienna in there just to have a little warmth within the shadows. Looking really good. And let's go over here. And we're going to do the same thing. The shadow I see. So you can always draw your shadow on. You can look at your photograph and say, all right, I want to make the shadow correctly. I don't want to go off and make the shadow, where it doesn't look good and where it's not really showing in the picture. So you look at the picture over there, you take a look at your picture across from you and say, okay, the shadow runs across the face of this building right at the top of this roof here, the peak of this gable roof, which is where the entryway is for the entrance into the building, where the front door is, the front entry. So if that's the case, then you can draw that line like that, make it a little wavy, and then go in and we get our wash color, and then we just write it, you know, put our wash right in there. Do our cool, beautiful shadow wash under there, just like that. And look at how good that looks. And now I notice this here is all in shadow, so I can keep working that shadow like so. I saw I went over there a little bit. And some raw sienna. Let's get some warmth in there. And the same thing, we have shadow here. Wow, that looks fantastic. That looks excellent, doesn't that? The bright sunlight, you can really feel that bright, exciting sunlight in this scene. And what I do is I take a little bit of cadmium lemon yellow, and if you take just a very small, tiny bit of that, dry off the brush, rinse the brush, shake off some water, then you tap the brush here, and you just get a little bit of that cadmium lemon yellow, and you just put it in a few spots here and there, and that gives you the, ooh, that gives you that nice warm feel of the sunlight. That sunlight is bright and it's golden color, so you add just a little touch of that cadmium lemon yellow, just in a few spots though, not everywhere, just a few spots. And you let that dry, and you'll just notice it gives it that real beautiful. You can even do a little tiny bit of orange, cadmium orange also. And it gives you that sunlight feel. And then we can also do a little bit of shadowing here. On the fencing. And we are pretty good now. I think you notice I did draw in some trees over here. I'm going to just erase those, because sometimes when you are painting, you leave something out and then you say, oh, and then you come back, you take a break and you come back and go, oh, you know what? I think it's going to look better if I don't have those trees in the distance there over those rooftops. Like I have them here, or I have trees here, I have trees here, I have trees over here. It looks good to skip a space and not have them there. So I think that looks better without those bit of you know, greens and trees over here by this area. I think it looks better, so we just erase the lines and we're good to go. Another thing I remembered we have to do here is there's another shadow I see too here. If you see a little spot that needs a little bit of darkening up, a little bit of darker tonal value, like here, under there, like that. Now the key is here not to keep going over and over and over with more details. I know this is where I've run into many issues over the years where we overfinish our paintings. Let's not do that. I notice here we need the shadow up here. Here we need a shadow. Okay. So now I'm just looking around the painting, seeing if I see anything glaringly obvious that we need to touch up. And I don't think there's much more. I notice I need burnt sienna, raw sienna, some raw sienna, maybe a little bit of raw umber. And maybe a little bit of the cad lemon yellow too. That might be good with this. And let's do the fronts of the chimneys, but we want to make it more red. Just a lighter tonal value. I think that'll work out good. So here, this is the sunlight on this side of the chimneys here. So the shadow side is over on this side, and then we have the sunlit side over here. That looks fine. Maybe some cadmium red and cadmium orange. We'll put some so I'm just putting the chimney pots on now. Where the sunlight is, it's more of a brighter color red, and then on this side over here, it's more of a shadow color. So I think that looks good too. Now we have this. Let's do the sky wash. But obviously now we just did these chimney pots on the tops of the chimneys, so now we really can't do the sky until that's 100% dry. So let's take another break. I'm going to completely dry this again. I'm going to take the blow dryer and dry off all the areas, especially along the rooftops, because we're going to do our sky wash and come down with our sky wash this way. So we can't have any of this being still wet paint. We have to dry that all, or let it dry. If you want to take a break for an hour or two, that's fine. All right, so let's pick it back up again in about an hour or two. Or we can take a blow dryer and do it that way. So I'll probably blow dry this and come back and we'll do the sky wash and maybe a little bit of shadowing on our roadway here. Okay, we'll be right back. Okay, we're back, everybody. Glad you're back again to finish up this painting with us here, and we're having a great time. We're having an absolutely great time. We're actually, we took an hour break. And in this case, I did not blow dry this. I just gave it about an hour, so I'm back from about an hour break, and everything seems to be pretty dry. So I'm just checking. Yep, everything's perfectly dry for the sky area. We said we were going to do the sky next, the sky wash, so we want to make sure everything along this sky here, along the anything that is adjoining the sky area, we want to make sure that's all 100% dry. And also, too, we're going to do some washes on this road, so we want to make sure anything there is dry, too, and that's all good. So we're ready to go here. So I cleaned, I got some fresh water in my water pail, and let's keep up with our good painterly habits. We'll just wash up our palette here, clean up our palette with a little paper towel and water. And that's going to produce better looking washes with cleaner colors. Okay, so now we will, this is the kind of the frosting on the cake. We're basically going to do our sky wash. Cerulean blue. Let's mix in some good colors here. Cobalt blue, French ultramarine, purple. So we'll kind of mix our sky like that, and then we'll mix in some raw sienna too. We did use raw sienna a lot in this painting, so let's add that a little bit to the sky, and then some orange in the very lowest areas of the wash of the sky. We usually always go with like an orange color along this portion here of the sky, and that's usually the warmth of the atmosphere of Earth. The Earth on the surface is much warmer than the upper atmosphere, so you have your cooler sky up above, and then as the sky, the atmosphere above, as we're looking at it and lower to the Earth, it's going to be a little warmer, so you'll see a little bit of the warmth from the atmosphere, and there's some dust and other particles and particulates that are along the bottom of the atmosphere, along the crust of the Earth, so we'll remember that. So let's take our blue, plenty of blue, and it's good. I like to kind of not fuss with the sky too much. Putting a little bit of burnt sienna in that wash too can be good. And I just kind of work it around the paint. Now here, when we're going around the chimneys and the roofs, let's just get it on there and finish up. Let's not put too much water on there and spend too much time there, because that'll disturb the paint underneath. So let's make sure we get the wash on and then just keep moving and keep going, and there we go. See, that's much better than fussing around too much. And I'm just scrubbing around, having a good time. And then, like we said, we'll add a little orange to this portion of the roof, to this portion of the sky, which is along. And then I just blend those two together like that. So we blend that all together. And again, we try not to paint over the tops of the chimneys if we can. Try to paint around them if you can, like that, you know. And this way it won't disturb the paint too much. And then, you know, if it does happen, no big deal. You can kind of watch it with your, you can have a tissue handy and watch the chimneys. If you see anything starting to bleed and blossom and cauliflower, you can dab up a little bit of paint with the tissue. Or you can just take the tissue anyway once you put the wash down, and then just go really lightly along the tops like that, just to get up any excess water. And if you see a spot that's I think that looks really good. Okay, so we dab a little bit if you want to lift up anything you see that might be bothering you. Everyone's different. You might be happy with it, the way it looks the first wash. But I find that this type of painting is better to just less is more. Less going over it again and again and again is better. If you can just get it done in, you know, like we did it in really 3 washes. We did the first wash, the roofs, and some, you know, and the bushes and the trees. Second wash, we did the shadows. And now we're on the third wash, we're doing the sky. We'll do some shadowing here. So if you can, 2 or 3 washes really is max, I think, for this kind of a painting. So let's make a shadow color. So purple and cerulean blue looks pretty good. And we're going to do some mystery shadows. So to make the painting look better, burnt sienna, maybe a little too. To make the painting look a little better, we might just put a few shadows here. And you can adjust the color if you want more purple. That looks better, purple and some blue. And then we'll put in some of the we're going to harmonize the colors a little. So those are some trees that we don't see, but they're there in the shadows. And we might even do a little more. Actually, we might do a little okay, that looks good. We're going to maybe put a small tree over here. Maybe on this area where the grass is. Maybe we can put a little small tree here to kind of, make it look more interesting, because it looks good the way it is, but I think we could make it a little more. A little more interesting. So let's try that, but we have to let this dry, of course. So this is something where we do some trial and error. I think here we're going to blow dry this to dry it off. We'll use our ink and wash again to rough in a tree over here, a small grouping of maybe a couple, 2, 3 small tree trunks and some branches, and then we'll go over it with a little bit of wash too. And I think that should be perfect. The only thing I'm just going to think about is, where am I going to put the tree? Is it going to be over here more to the left? And then that might be better, because I don't think this looks that great over here. This a bunch of trees in the distance here. I think maybe a tree over here on the side of the painting might look good to sort of like camouflage this a little bit. I don't know how great that looks, but I'm very happy. This side of the painting looks better. This was the focal point anyway, this side of the painting. All right, so let's come back. We'll take another break. We'll let this dry, the shadows on the roadway here, and we'll continue with some more interesting details on this to try to get it 100% perfect the way we want it. Okay, hi friends again. Let's get back into this here now. We left off, we wanted to make a small bit of maybe some bushes or some small trees and limbs and things over here on the right side to kind of bring more interest to the painting. It seems like the painting is more it can kind of use something a little bit to make it maybe have more of a three-dimensional look to it, and I think that's a perfect thing we're going to do here. And sometimes when you try something like I'm going to do now, which is add something in, sometimes it's not going to work, and it's no reason to feel like the painting didn't work or anything, especially when you can crop things down. Like I always say, crop your paintings down. If you find you have just one small area in your painting that looks great, crop it down and just crop out an area that maybe didn't come out so good if you try something on an area of your painting and it doesn't work. Does that make sense? So let's say we try something over here on the right hand side and it doesn't work out. Well, we can always crop the painting down and make it smaller, you know, like that. So you can always, again, trim the painting down. If something doesn't come out perfect, no reason to take the whole painting and say, oh, it didn't work. No, there's always, another thing I like to say, I hope you'll remember this, is there's always good parts of the painting that look good that you've accomplished when you do a painting. There might be other areas in the painting that don't look great or something didn't come out the way you wanted to, but sometimes even a small area might be an area that maybe half the painting turned out perfect and the other half there might have been some problems. No big deal. Enjoy the good parts that came out just the way you wanted to, and then the other parts that maybe didn't come out perfect, well, then you just say, hey, the next time I'm painting, I'm going to remember maybe to kind of stay away from doing that or this or the other thing. All right, so now we're going to go for it and try our little bit of foliage over here and a little bit of a small bush or something. We have our super black, speedball super black. Again, we're going to go back in and do a little bit of, probably better to do this like that. So we're going to get a little bit of ink. We'll start off with our large Bill Buckman large size bamboo pen. And already I spilled some ink, so I'm going to get my paper towel. Okay, now let's do this here. I'll start off like that with a kind of a wide trunk there. And it doesn't have to be tremendously big or anything like that, or, you know, it doesn't have to be incredibly loud, so to speak, in the painting, because just a small bit of just like that. So I made a couple like that, some trunks and things, and okay, I think that looks good. So we're just trying this out, trial and error. If we don't take risks and try different things in our paintings, we're not going to really learn what we like or what we think is going to work good the next time. So I've done this a lot in the past, so I know it's going to pretty much work out pretty good. We'll see how it turns out ultimately here. But I've done this many times, and I've learned this from all the great painters I've watched over the years that like to add that extra dimension in their paintings. So they'll put something, you know, in the foreground. And so now we've got in we've roughed in with our ink some really good branches in the trunks. Now let's get our watercolor brush and we'll mix up some greens, sap green, olive green, raw umber, and some cadmium lemon yellow too. Now what we can do is we can pick up the paint with our brush and spatter a bit. That always looks good. Gives it that light feel so that we can see through it. So maybe a few touches with the brush here and there. we can do a little finger painting. This will look better with a little more so I will spatter and splash like that. And I think that looks good. I wouldn't keep working on it too much. I think that would just look good the way it is. Again, overworking can sometimes, it'll lose its effect of looking good if there's too much going on with it. So I'll take a little more brown and green, sap green, burnt umber, and raw umber and burnt sienna, and just maybe make a little more, some ground foliage there, some dark, maybe a little bit of French ultramarine blue. A little bit of purple. We'll do some, so that might be in shadow over here. There we go. So that's in shadow a little bit over here. Excuse me. And I think what will happen is once we put the mat on this and have it framed, you really won't be too concerned with this area. We can crop that bit out. So always remember too, when you're going to put a mat on your painting and frame it, you can trim it down a little bit. All right, so let's get ready here, and we'll start to remove the tape. Always looks better when we have that tape on, and when we remove the tape, it's framed out really nicely with a mat, a nice crisp border. And I think that looks really good. I'm very happy with this, and maybe we'll lift it up and we'll zoom in a little bit. Just one more time. I know we saw this in the beginning of the video. We can kind of zoom in one more time. And I think that looks good. Okay, everyone, thanks again for watching. Thanks for coming by. I appreciate it. I'm really thankful and happy that everyone is having fun learning new things in watercolor. This ink and wash technique is a great technique. I hope you'll try it. And we'll see you on the next video. Thanks again, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.